has the justice system in Nigeria encouraged or helped in deconstructing the sexual assault and rape culture in Nigeria?
So Lagos State has been a trailblazer in this regard. Lagos State has a special court called the Sexual Offences Court at Ikeja that's just dedicated to trying those that sort of offences. Lagos State in its criminal law has made the age of legal consent 18 years. You will find that in the criminal code it is 14 years, and in the penal code it is 13 years. So that's a huge step. You will also find that a boy child can be defiled in Lagos State. Previously, it was only girls by the definition of that provision that could be defiled. And I think essentially Lagos State just wants to, many of these sexual offenses have life imprisonment to deter people from what's called perpetrating those sorts of heinous offenses. And there's even established sexual harassment as well, which was a huge step. That was never an offense in Nigeria, but regrettably, I can keep talking on and on about what Lagos State has done, but other states are very, very far behind.
Are there sentences for sexual harassment?
Yes, 3 years.
3 years in Lagos.
Yeah.
Section 262 of the criminal, Lagos State Criminal Code is 3 years. Funny enough, it's not in any other state, even in our Labour Act. Our Labour Act does not mention anything about sexual harassment or any form of harassment, surprisingly. But apparently, there was meant to be a Labour Bill of 2008 that was to be passed to become law. But funny enough, for 10 years now, it hasn't been passed. No one is hearing anything about it. But in that Labour Act, that Labour Bill, if it was to be passed in 2008, Section 20 makes it sexual harassment an offence. And Section 60 of that Act to be passed defines sexual harassment as disturbance of any form. So basically, Nigeria, from what he has said and what I would say, we are backward in terms of sexual offences and all. Aside Lagos State and also in the FCT, there's Violence Against Persons Protection Act of 2010, but it's only applicable in the FCT. In that law, a boy can be raped. Before, in our criminal code and our penal code, nothing is mentioned about a boy child or a man. But in that law now, a guy can be raped, but it's sad that it's only applicable in Abuja. So more needs to be done on this aspect.
So in major states, Lagos, etc., we're sort of doing better, but in other parts of the country,
other parts of progress. Also, there's also a Child's Rights Act. The Child Rights Act also talks about, also says the legal age of consent and getting married is 18. And the Child Rights Act, it's mentioned in the Child Rights Act section 31, and it's also an offence to marry a minor in the Child Rights Act. Also,
and are these laws even being practiced? Like we have all these laws in Lagos, etc., child rights, but what good are these laws doing if they're not actually being practiced? So, for example, we know that there's child marriage going on.
Yes.
Even though we have laws to protect victims from rape, how many of them are actually being prosecuted in criminal courts? Things like that. Are they working?
That is the problem. It just started working. Before, we only had one celebrated case on rape in Nigeria. It was the state versus Akimbade. But with what Lagos State is doing now, I guess we'll get to see more from time to time. Before, it was even very, very difficult to prove rape because the criminal code, in all honesty, and the penal code makes it very difficult to prove a lot of offences. So our laws basically are backward. To me, I don't know what our National Assembly, I don't know what they do. They just sit down and collect fat allowances. They collect 13 million naira per month, legal salary, man, what they do.
So you guys are lawyers.
Yeah.
So what is the legal punishment for rape, sexual assault, or harassment?
Okay, for rape, it's life imprisonment according to section 357 of the criminal code. Also, there's also what we call defilement. Sometimes it comes hand in hand. Like if the girl is underage, it's rape plus defilement. But now with what Lagos State is doing and the Violence Against Persons Protection Act, a guy can also be raped because that one it's a broader perspective. Before, rape was only through penetration.
Yeah.
Now, in that act, you can rape someone through with a dildo, with your hand, by fingering and other ways. So I think that law is we're meeting up with.
Theoretically, if under the defense of necessity, if in order to prevent harm and you feel there's imminent danger to your person or to your property, you're entitled to defend yourself and your property, right? So if, say, someone is about to rape a woman or a man and then he gets a sharp object and stabs the person, he could be convicted under the defense of necessity. But I do not see that defense working if, say, 2 weeks after the incident,
You then go and find
you then go and find the person and then stab the person in his sleep, because then that would just be premeditated.
So what would you say a person should do in that situation? Some time has passed.
Yes.
They've been potentially abused or harassed, and
Yes.
they're not sure what they should do next. What would you recommend?
I would recommend that they go to a police station and report. So there's this, Lagos State has been again at the forefront. There's the Domestic Violence and Sexual Response Team, and they usually have a unit in the family support unit of every big police station. So and then they actually do train these police officers to understand the way sexual offences work. They train them to be more empathetic, and so when a woman comes and says XYZ has harassed me, has raped me, and this, they're a bit more sensitive towards the issues. They try to be confidential as well, and then if they do feel there is a case, then it would be very well prosecuted. So I think the more this kind of sentiments are promoted to make victims understand that there is help out there. There's also counseling, free counseling for victims. I think the more this just is propagated, people would, first of all, people will be deterred because they know that there are strict sanctions for doing them, and then victims will also be able to speak out more.
Other forensic evidence to kind of prove.
Yes, precisely. There's even the lab,
Forensic resources.
from the forensic lab, the DNA lab at Marina. Yeah, it's
It
massive.
just came out very massive for DNA test and all. So Lagos State government generally are doing a lot legally and in every aspect. It's like Lagos State is so developed compared to other states. I wish other states could just come and learn from Lagos State.
But why is it that Lagos has different laws from other states?
So the way it works is that it depends on what the issue is, right? So in the Constitution, there are things called the exclusive list, which only the federal government can legislate on.
Okay.
There's the concurrent list with both the federal and state government, and then there's the residual list, right? Because criminal activities are not in the exclusive list, both the federal government can legislate on it and then the state government. So what now happens is that the states now have to own their stuff, if that makes sense. So Lagos State, being the commercial hub, understands that you're going to, drive away potential investors if your laws are backwards and your infrastructure is backward. So Lagos State decided that they were going to have this very innovative criminal law. But other states, like say, Kaduna is actually, interestingly, in the north, Kaduna is actually trying to be proactive in this regard as well. I know that there's a bill on the floor of their National Assembly which is meant to repeal all these archaic laws, especially pertaining to sexual offences. They increased the age of sexual consent to 16 years. It used to be.
Oh,
It was
13.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
It used to be 13.
which is
In which state?
Kaduna State. Yeah.
In most northern states,
Northern states is 13.
13.
So you can imagine
terrible.
it's terrible. Which is why they are beset with what's that thing really. But let's not even go into that. That's another topic.
even a present senator, Sani Arima, married a young girl of 16 or so. I think she's 16. She's from Egypt.
How old was
Wow.
he?
In 60.
He was a governor in Zamfara for 2 years. The person that started Sharia law, and he's a senator. When he was a senator, he's still a senator. He married a girl of 16.
That means when he was 40, she was born.
Precisely.
That's interesting.
So there's this thing of defilement against a child. So under the criminal code and the penal code, do you believe that you have to charge the matter to court within 2 months of the occurrence?
Statute bar, what we call statute bar.
Limitation
Limitation
of
statute
law.
bar.
I mean, 2 months sounds short. I mean, there
It
are
is very
statutes
short.
of limitation. Is that how it actually is, or
That's what it is. That's what it's.
you have 2 months to come forward?
You have to. No, not to come forth. For the charge to have been filed.
Charge it.
So meaning that if you come forth in 2 months to the police station, you feel that you're strong enough to go through the rigors of trial and everything, and then you report it. If at the time police people now actually file charge and you say I was assaulted, or rather my child was assaulted on a particular date and they calculate it and it's more than 2 months, they'll tell you so.
They won't do anything. That's terrible. Is that the same in
Terrible.
Lagos as well?
No, it's not. Lagos State doesn't have that. So I'm saying, so any state that does not have its own domestic criminal law, like Lagos State has, would now be bound by either the criminal code, which governs states in the south, or the penal code, which governs states in the north. So if you don't have your personal thing, then it means that, so for example, if from my state, Delta State, which doesn't have its own criminal law, if in Delta State, we would still be bound by the 2 months, too much rule. And I find it very silly because I see no reason why crime should ever be statutory.
Yeah, because even with the Harvey
yes.
Weinstein case, it took years for all these celebrities to come
Exactly.
out. So 2 months, not even a year, like a girl or boy can be dealing
To be
with
fair,
so
it should
much.
be like 60
within
years.
It should definitely be
Fair,
like a long.
If anytime.
Yeah.
If anything,
60 years.
like within months, like, and so you mentioned Harvey Weinstein. Just
Yeah.
most of the stories that came out a few weeks ago on Twitter. Some of these stories are from things that happened
In
6
the
years
90s,
ago.
yeah.
So there's no reason that there should be such a short statute on it. But you mentioned the case of a woman who was groped at the bus stop.
Yes.
And how the person who did it is now facing jail time.
Mm-hmm.
To you, does that sound like a one-off situation, or like what I'm really asking is how often are cases like that
Like that
prosecuted?
reported and prosecuted.
It's
And
rare.
was there, was there evidence
Yeah.
that allowed, her to come forward? Was there security footage? Like, how do people, how do these situations usually go?
So someone did the Honorable Chief Justice of Lagos State when she was inaugurating the Sexual Offences Act. She actually came up with some statistics. Between 1999 rather, I beg your pardon, and 2004, there were only 691 cases that had been reported,
Wow.
which I think is obviously, it probably doesn't even scratch the
Yeah,
surface of what actually happens. Again, virtually all these cases were against women and children, about 98.4 of them against women and children. I think about 44% of them were withdrawn. So what would have happened is that either say the offender just settled the matter to court, or there was pressure on the complainant or threatened to just withdraw the case. I think a very meager. I think only about 5-6% of those cases actually resulted in convictions against the offenders. So what tends to happen is that there's always another thing was that about 66% of these cases happen at the perpetrators' houses.
Wow.
So the trend that you see in these things is that they generally are people that maybe you're comfortable with to an extent. For you to go to their house, people you know personally, so like their neighbors, their friends, whatever, and then that happens. And so whenever that happens, people say, so are you really sure you want to prosecute this matter? Is he not your friend? Is our neighbor? Do you want to bring shame to the family name?
Yeah, so it's
Stigma.
kind of blaming on the victim.
On the victim, yes.
Yeah.
So I think if people can just disabuse their minds as to the fact that they really are the captains of their own ships, their ships being their lives, if you feel, not if you feel, if you have been abused, there is help out. That's just true. There is help out there. There are people to support you. There's the right social machinery, at least in Lagos State, to help you achieve justice. And I say this because even in the sentencing of the offender where he's convicted, the interest of the victim is actually taken into account. Yes, and there's actually provision for medical expenses, for example, to be defrayed by the offender. So say you've expended huge sums in psychological, what's it called, healing classes or something, or just medical expenses in having to, take care of yourself, your genitals. Yeah, you can be compensated. And but maybe this information isn't put out there as much as it should.
A certified doctor has to prove it. Has to prove
Yes.
that you went through a lot.
Yes,
That's
yes.
very important. That
Yes.
certified isn't. I've forgotten what is a law now.
So can I just jump in 2 questions before we round up? One, so you mentioned that I think 40% of them were thrown out. The cases were thrown out.
Not withdrawn.
They
so
were
we're not
withdrawn
thrown out.
because they happened at the accuser's place. Was that the reason?
Oh, no. I was giving difference. So I said 40% were withdrawn. So that means that before they could be decided on the merits,
Some back things
someone,
happened.
the complainant herself just withdrew it and said, I don't want to.
So in cases whereby the situation or whatever it is happened at the accuser's house,
Yes.
what happens there? Because it seems like, at least most cases I've heard, it's when you take it to the police, it's like, what were you doing there? As opposed to,
Yes.
okay, he raped me. That's not the point. The point is I was raped.
Yes.
And so what happens in situations like, I think that's one of the reasons why, because majority of these cases happen with people that you know, not even just strangers.
Yeah, not true.
And so when you report it to the police, it's like, but then you guys are like this. So like, how does a victim like me push through that situation, knowing that the justice system or the general system is just not going to listen to me because I put myself in that situation?
I think it also links back to, just to add on to the question, this idea of the burden of proof.
Yes.
When people come forward with stories of rape and harassment, there's always this sort of debate, and people are always trying to, do I believe you automatically, or is it up to you as a victim to prove to me
Yes.
that you went through X, Y, Z?
Yes.
Or if I ask you questions, am I blaming the victim, or am I just trying to get to the bottom of the situation? So, what do you think is the correct approach for for all the victims
Yes.
moving forward? What do you
Yes.
think is available for them?
I think this is a very excellent question, and it's been at the heat of these sorts of
Wait,
conversations.
so isn't it
Yeah.
guilty? Sorry.
Innocent.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly. That's what the Constitution says.
That's important.
Yes.
But in some
I think
countries,
all over the world it is the same case.
no,
Innocent.
I-
France
that
is
is
different.
not-
France is different.
Okay.
France have a different
Burden of proof.
But what should it be? I'm sure we all agree innocent till proven guilty makes much sense.
Yes.
Just because of situations where maybe someone's falsely accused and
Yes.
things like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then that creates a difficulty, because then you have all these real situations and people who are going through real issues. Then you have on the other end of the spectrum people who are making up false stories that kind of ruin the credibility of victims as a whole.
Yeah.
So which takes the priority?
I think it's not a precise science, but it's really just about emotional intelligence. So even the police investigator that is interviewing the victim, right? Even the manner in which she is asking the questions should not be aggressive in terms of, so why were you at his house? How many times have you been at his house? Are you people not friends? That kind of thing. My dad is a lawyer as well, and he would tell me that when he was in NYC, he did a case where he was representing the offender.
Wow.
Unfortunately, he was representing. But I mean, they are entitled to counsel.
Yeah.
But he was representing the offender, and then
You have a right
they
to
asked him,
represent.
Yeah.
and then they asked the IPO was asking the victim questions like, so you went to his house? Say yes. We're not forced to go to his house. Say, as you're asking these questions, you have to put down your answers in a full statement. Say yes. Said, and you took off your clothes willingly. She said yes. So when he put his hand on your lap, there was consent to say yes. So when did the consent stop? He said, when he wanted to sleep with me. But all previously, he was trying to build up a case that if you've led him to this point, then why did you stop? But you see, we're not animals. If she says no, she says
Even
no.
in the middle of sex, like
Even in the
if a
middle,
girl
she says,
says
get
no,
off me.
The issue is that Nigeria is silent on this issue, but in America, in North Carolina, so far you're giving consent, you can't withdraw consent. But in California, you can withdraw your consent. So basically, this
Varying standards.
The topic.
And then how do you prove that you've withdrawn consent? You know, we say, obviously we understand, you know, from the consent discussion that at any point during a sexual interaction you can withdraw. But if you willingly entered that situation, then when you try to report it and say, oh, I was raped, I was harassed, how do you even go about proving that actually you were violated? Is there anything you can do?
Well,
Yes,
it's really hard.
circumstantial evidence is the only way you can. Because it's very difficult.
perhaps through leading questions, so the investigator can know how to catch someone. Like, did she say this?
Yeah, that's
And
the only way. That's
perpetrator can possibly confess without even knowing it.
That's
probably why so many of these, you know, so many of these cases are withdrawn, or you know, they don't.
Because
lack of evidence.
Lack of evidence is a very serious issue.
So, just in terms of this evidence thing, so that we're not leaving victims with no hope, if you want to report a case, how do you think they should go about it?
So I would say that first of all, they go with people who would give them that strong emotional, moral support. Because if one has been abused, then it means your psyche is very battered, more than even your physical body, to be honest. So if you have that sort of support system around you, and then also go with a lawyer, really, because when you go to the police station to report the matter properly, if a lawyer is there, not because the lawyer is the one going to be writing the statement on your behalf, but in the presence of the lawyer would send a message to the police officer rather, that you need to be careful the way you are interrogating this woman. You need to ask the right questions. You know, so you can't be aggressive against like that. Yes, we have to be the ones to prove, because it's a constitutional right. It can never be the other way, that once I come and report that this man raped me, automatically guilty. No, it has to be. So you have to prove it properly. So, but if I'm giving you all this evidence, I'm giving you all these clarifications, I must have this feeling that I'm giving it to fertile ground, to people who will take it properly, rather than people who are looking for something to use against me. You know, because what you also find is that oftentimes the perpetrators are at a more economically advantaged position than the victims. So if the perpetrator comes and gives them money, for example, then that's usually when they're just looking for anything to make it look like the victim was the one at fault.
Hey guys, I want you guys to please like, subscribe and share, and if possible comment below. We will not and we will never be silent.